Look at some of our history, just a moment. For all the people who've done their civil engineering, you will realize that this is what we call as a stepped well. Right? Now, you've seen this lately in one of these movies that you saw, right? All of you have seen Sairat. So in that you went ahead and saw the stepped well. Right? Now, that's probably the reminiscent thing of the stepped well that you have got. But if you look at it, isn't it an ingenious masterpiece of how a well can be accessed? And these exist everywhere in this country. Do you think this happened by somebody who got a bachelor's in diploma or got a diploma or got a bachelor's? No. For those folks who go to some Buddhist stupa, what is the phenomenon about the Buddhist stupa? There are no pillars inside. It is a classic case of cantilever. You remember anybody having a BE or a diploma in civil engineering who built the stupa? No. This is one interesting set of temples in Jain Panth. It's a pillarless, it's a temple where one of the pillars is hanging from the top. So people come and वो अपने साड़ी और कपड़े जो है नीचे से घुमाते हैं उसको. Now if you ask why is it that it was built like that a pillar is hanging from the top and it has a difference from the ground of about 1 centimeter or whatever few mm. So you realize that temple was built in an area which is a seismic zone. Earthquake आता है. Earthquake आने की वजह से tremors आते रहते हैं. So suppose 2 or 3 critical pillars of the place fall, this pillar will come into place and solve the balancing problem. Smart, na? You remember any civil engineer or a diploma who has done this work? These are public toilets, urinals of the past. Some of which you find in Rome, some of you find in Mohenjo-daro, the earlier civilization which we belong to. Unfortunately, that is now in Pakistan, and our Pakistani friends seem to have no sense of history. Their history started in 1400, but they've been foolish enough not to realize that they have a whole culture behind them. So we often jokingly call it's a country which is still trying to find its history. But the reason that they do not do well is because they continue to negate the fact that they have come from a civilization which is the Indian civilization. And the Indian civilization has no reverberance with religion or panth or whatever, it is a culture. And that culture, if adopted with smartness, all of these places will not be broken up by them, but they will be rather conserved and converted into an economic factor, like a tourist destination. You know, most of India's ancestral history lies in Pakistan. Most of our temples, most of our monuments, most of our structures lie in Pakistan. And I mean, I don't know what they're thinking or what dope they are on, but they have gone ahead and disowned that. And they think that those should be destroyed. They were fools who went ahead and did that in Afghanistan. They destroyed those Bamiyan, sculptures of Buddha. And they were pieces of art. You would have made tourist money out of it. You would have at least given so many more people employment. But there are doctrines, there are thought processes. We cannot negate that. Let's look at the underground flush toilets. Water keeps flowing from the bottom, or इन्हें नालियाँ बोलते हैं हमारे यहाँ गाँव में. So this is an example for chemical engineers. Wood steel, also known as Damascus steel. This steel, until some time back, was found in being metallurgically created in India, in south of India. For the folks who are from south, there is a lot of history and culture in the south of India, which is very, very unique and distinct from a scientific point of view. Very less celebrated. No, certain theories have come in which just don't celebrate all of it. But this was work of some engineer, right? Look at this pillar. Unfortunately, this kind of is not looked at as much, but this is the bronze metallurgy pillar which is there, Ashoka pillar in Delhi. This pillar has not had any rusting for probably thousands of years. Why would that be? You understand the complication of metallurgy, right? At probably 1000 degrees centigrade, you are smelting metals and converting them into an alloy. You think that happened with somebody having an engineering or a civil engineering degree or a chemical engineering degree? In some of our documents of the past, they have given how bronze can be created, okay, albeit in a different language. Some of you who are watching a lot of Marathi cinema would remember a black and white movie where there is this heroine called Jayashree Gadkar. She's singing a song, and inside her house, her husband is basically smelting metal. And in that smelting of metal, there is some very interesting stuff that is happening. At 1000 degrees centigrade inside your house, what will happen to the rest of the walls of your house? But madam is singing the song, she is cooking food, husband is sitting over there and smelting iron. The key of that Koshi yantra is basically the lining inside the yantra. This lining is the magic, which is such a large insulator that 1000 degrees centigrade temperature is not felt in the rest of the house. This yantra was available locally in everyone's house, whoever was doing smelting a while back. Genius part of engineering. Okay, we have many things which tell by Agne, when your is applied to Swarna or to Rajat or to any alloy, what's the kind of stuff that comes out. Here's a curious photo you will see. It's a photo of what we call as Diwali में हम लोग उसको याद करते हैं, what we call as the rocket. Okay. Now there is a history to this. This rocket is what we call popularly as Mysore rockets. These were used by Tipu Sultan in his resistance to the British with the help of the French. Now there was a very big problem. We all have learnt Newton, right? So when we learnt Newton, there is something that we learnt, which was one of these third laws of motion. Okay, for every single action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Then there was a second law, which was around momentum. Now the momentum law, what did it say? That m1 v1 is equal to m2 v2. Which means if you want to fire a small mass bullet for a long distance at a high velocity, you will have to you can fire it from a high mass delivery mechanism with a low recoil velocity. So you know the concept of a pistol or you know the concept of a cannon. A lower mass ball is thrown out with high velocity because a very high mass cannon recoils at a low velocity. So the m2 v2 of the cannon and its backward velocity is equal to the m1 v1. So smaller the mass of the bullet, the higher the velocity of the bullet. Now there was a problem with cannons. What was the problem with cannons? That you could not carry cannons anywhere. Okay, I mean, lately we had one movie in which one actor decided to carry a cannon from Delhi to Maharashtra, recreating history, but I think that's a little far-fetched. Having large cannons being transported is complicated. So how do you go ahead and solve this problem? So what they came out about this design was ingenious. The delivery mechanism of the explosive in the rocket is in the rocket itself. 2/3 of the length of this explosive area at the top gets burnt in taking the rocket to the place where it needs to go. And 1/3 of it explodes over. This completely took away the requirement of cannons. Ever since, cannons were last used in First World War, after which we have only had missiles which reach the destination and don't need any sort of a launcher that needs to be carried to the destination. Now, the longer you want to travel, the longer is the area which you want to burn. So it takes away the problem of delivery. Who was the genius behind this? Must have been some scientist in Tipu Sultan's court. We don't know his name. It is an invention which we have done. And if anybody asks you who makes satellites in space, orbital vehicles, who creates missiles, I'm sure most of us will definitely be able to say it was not India. For the folks from south of India, there's this guy called VOC, Chidambaram Pillai, he's called as VOC. He created the first Indian passenger shipping service from Colombo during the British Raj, 1907. Finally, was an industrialist who created this. He was hanged by the British because he waged war against the British Navy. When Vasco da Gama comes to India, he comes via South Africa. So when he comes via South Africa, he meets one Gujarati trader over there, only to find that the trader, has actually come by ship from India to South of Africa. And the trader had much larger ships. You would know that Gujarat has some of the largest ship-breaking yards in this country. Ancestral, huh? This is not new. But ये सदियों से चलता आ रहा है काम. Shivaji had a navy, right? Kanoji Angre was the admiral of the navy. These ships could go way inside. For those who are from Assam, I'm not sure if you know, there's a legend in Assam called Lachit Borphukan. He was kind of fighting a battle with the Mughals And he had these very specific cannons which used to run on small boats. And on the boats he would have cannons, and he had a river navy. So the Ahom king, what he was called then, they had a navy on the river, not on the seas. The river boats are different from the sea boats. And the artillery that you use in river boats is different. Finally, the Mughals lost out in Assam because of this navy which they had. The Mughals never had a navy. Now, this entire industry has been built here. Do we produce ships? No. Now we are starting to do that. Jagdish Chandra Bose, you'll find his poster in many chemistry laboratories. बेचारे ऊपर से लटक के नीचे देखते रहते हैं क्या हाल बना रहे हैं chemical lab में हमारे. He was the one who discovered microwaves, at least communication in plants. He said this is not an invention, it's a discovery. It has been in nature. I have just found it. He never took any sort of a copyright or a patent. Finally, it was used by many other people for other services. जिसका patent आज तक हम लोग पैसे भर रहे हैं, but it belonged to him. You've learnt about the trigonometry sutra, or not trigonometry, Pythagoras Sutra. It was originally done by Bodhayan. Okay, Bodhayan went ahead and created this thing around that the square of one side. It actually came out more from a problem of drawing something and drawing some land partition. The square of two sides is equal to square of the hypotenuse. 1000 years later, it is called as Pythagoras Theorem. Even today, we kind of try to look at who has invented it or who has come out with it and try to give credit to people who probably don't deserve it. But at least go ahead and find your area. Area of triangle, angles of measurement. In Indian architecture, the measurement cannot be done by degrees. It has to be done by much smaller micro degrees. Kal was the smallest one that we had. And that then kind of moves on and becomes much more. Degree is much later. Like they say, one bhag is the degree. Aryabhatta and Bhaskaracharya have given the exact distances which are there from here till the other planets by just sitting here. Obviously, they were people who understood trigonometry. For folks who become doctors, Sushrut, we'll get to hear about him a little more in coming days. He went ahead and came up with about, I think, 50 or 60 different instruments which are even today utilized as designs for surgery. Any country had battles. When you had battles, you had cuts, you had wounds. There had to be methods with which you had to do surgery. And these instruments existed.